Hey, folks, welcome to my program. It is Scotty Roberts, your host, right here on the Intrepid radio program. That's live well, it's not live tonight on Odyssey Radio. And if Russ, the station manager, owner, is listening, he knows, but I'm going to say it for your case. We're taking just a little hiatus from Odyssey Radio until we get studio stuff and everything, all the tech squared away. So you're not going to hear this live on Odyssey in audio format tonight. It's only going to be live here on the YouTube channel. But let me say, the show regularly airs Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Left Coast time over on the Odyssey Radio Network, and that's ODYSY1.com. So come on over, see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio. You can find other places where this show airs in archive format over there. And also, as most of you here already know, but those of you maybe watching an archive don't know, well, you must know because you'd be watching it in an archive over on my YouTube channel. I also broadcast this show in simulcast on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And did you know that if you go down below this window or go out back out to the main page here, you're going to see the Intrepid radio link with all the shows we've done since we started on Odyssey. And there's over 365 shows in archive over there that you can watch. So if you haven't caught up yet, you got 365 hours of listening to do and watching to do. So when you're doing nothing, you're washing dishes, you're doing laundry, you're mopping the floors. Now those all sound like menial tasks. Maybe you're doing something else, like I don't know, playing chess, building a fire, robbing a bank, whatever it might be. You can listen to this show and watch it in archive right here on this channel. And so I want to welcome you all here tonight. Thanks for coming in. And by the way, right below this window where you're watching the show, right down here, there's a little join button. You can click that join button. Maybe it's over here. I don't know where it is. Mirror reflection in the camera. You go down there, hit that join button to join this channel. You're going to see three ways that you can become a member. There's a $2, a $5, and a $15 membership. If you call those up, each one of those levels will tell you what you get as a perk for becoming a member of this show. And those of you who are members, did you know we did a live spur of the moment live stream on Saturday for Just a Lousy Cup of Coffee? And that is generally our 6 a.m. Central Time show for members only. Many times we've opened that up to the public about halfway through. That's where we just join before you got to toddle off to work and you have your cup of coffee and we discuss stuff of the day, current events, topic driven. So watch for those announcements coming up this week. And we're going to have some changes in the studio coming up that you'll notice. It's more visual, but you'll notice that coming up soon. And so watch for that. And now everybody who's here now, I want to welcome you into the show. The nice thing once again about doing the live stream live is that I can say hello to you. I see Scott Allen over there. You're building a motorcycle out of clay, so I can make a perspective drawing of it. I was going to say, that's going to be tough to run gas into, isn't it? But Scott Allen, welcome. And you're listening while you're working. Michelle Canham Free. Michelle, you're here and it's not even 9:50 yet. So it's good to see you. I'm just teasing you, you know. And so it's great to see you here, being able to enjoy the show while we're doing it live. And I saw Doug Stack in there and Susie Q. And who else we got in here? Field Guy. You said you're sleepy because you've just done a 4-hour Twitch stream. What the hell did you talk about for 4 hours? And you know, about the only time I do 2.5 to 3 hours on this show is when we do the Sunday morning show. And so I hope you had a good time doing that. Susie Q, I said hello to you. Good to have you. Who else is in here that's signed in? And I can see him. Oh, Delaney. Good to see you, Delaney. Nice to have you here. And we'll see. The numbers keep going up, but I'm not seeing everybody that's in here. So you may not have made your presence known in the chat room. Greg Harrington, good evening. Good to have you here. And um, I have not yet figured out all the settings on my computer, so you might hear a few chimes. That's a bunch of my announcements that are coming in. Rock and Rhonda, good to see you. Rock and Rhonda, I need to see some of your recent cosplay costumes. I know you've got folks. If you haven't seen Rock and Rhonda over on Facebook, you're gonna have to go over and see some of the amazing stuff she does. And I have to go take a look again myself. It's been a while since I've acclimated myself. So you'll have to tell us in the chat room some of your more recent creations. What are you working on right now? I love your stuff. And so, everybody, welcome to the show. And tonight, if you are living in the South, I don't know exactly all the places it's hit, but here in Lake Charles, Louisiana, which is about a stone's throw from the Gulf of Mexico, we're about 25 miles or so from the Texas border. Down here, when I thought, you know what I did when I left home up in Wisconsin, Minnesota area? A couple of weeks ago, I did not bring warm clothes. I didn't bring a coat. I brought a hoodie jacket that snaps up. But do you know why I didn't do that? Because I was going south. And I was like, na na, na 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 na. Hey, hey, I'm going south where it's warm. And it's not Minnesota in the wintertime. You know what? We had that ice storm here last night. They're calling it thunder snow and thunder sleet. Now, I'd never heard those terms put together before, although I've seen on rare occasions throughout my life thunderstorms in the middle of winter. You don't normally see that, but we had thunderstorm and thunder sleet here last night, and we had a layer of ice. I'm not talking like Detroit ice, the ice effect from the lakes in the winter. I'm not talking about a little glaze. I'm talking about, it was, I don't know how thick it was, but a layer of ice all over everywhere. And you know what happens here? Because it's not Minnesota or a northern state, there's no snow plows where there wasn't really snow. It was ice with what looked like a frosting of snow over the top. But they have no salt for the roads, no salted sand for the roads, being distributed by great municipal vehicles that drive around to make sure nobody slips and slides. So you know what happens down here? City shuts down. Just like a lot of places in Texas over the weekend, and places all throughout the South. So it's here when I'm thinking I'm going south, and it's going to be warm. And then last week we actually got up to 76 degrees one day last week, and I was wearing, I think it was this zip up sweater, and I was thinking, man, it's nice outside. I overdressed. I thought I got to go back and put on a lighter shirt. And that was one day. I think that was Wednesday. By Thursday, it started getting cooler. And of course, it's going to be 12 degrees tonight down here. That's Minnesota weather. So if I came here for the weather, I could have stayed home. So I don't know if all of you, what parts of the country. I know Doug is less than an hour from here in Louisiana, over there in the chat room. I know Field Guy's over in New Orleans. And I've had a lot of people ask how the weather has been down here. And of course, I rub it in. I don't live here. I've been here when I was here for like a week, I was telling people, wow, I don't know how you people in the north live up there because it's so warm, it's mild. We have the mild Gulf Stream air coming in. I think I'll go sit on my veranda with my flowery shorts and my bare feet and sip a mint julep. But of course, it hasn't been that way. And like the cowardly lion said in The Wizard of Oz, when he woke up from the snow, woke up from the poppy spell. Weird weather you have in here. So there you go. Weird weather. Ice on the trees, says Maya Cato. Good to see you, Maya. Nice to have you here tonight. You moved to KCMO, Kansas City, Missouri, from Northern Cal in 2003. And this is the same weather we came into the first time. So, well, there you go. It's cold. And it's cold in the camper here. It's cold. And now camper, don't think, we're not sitting here, as I've mentioned, we're not in a little tiny camper, with the curved top and the little round porthole. And then we're freezing to death. This is a big motor coach home. And my studio right now is at this desk in the garage. And so it's pretty warm in here. The warmest place in the house right now is go into the powder room type bathroom right in between the kitchen, living room, and the garage here. And it's like 10 to 15 degrees warmer in there. So it's a little cool and keeping warm. Hey, Elder Barry, good to see you, sir. Glad you're here tonight. And so good to see everybody. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you've joined up tonight. And it does my heart good to see that you want to give your time and give it to me while we talk about sometimes weird stuff, sometimes history, sometimes archaeology and anthropology, sometimes psychology, sometimes familial relationship stuff, sometimes religious history. And those of you who are maybe newer to the show and you haven't heard a lot of that in the last week or so, we'll be going back to that in the near future. We talk about UFOs and Bigfoot and ghosts and stuff like that from time to time. And as Delaney knows so well, we sometimes talk about reptilians. That's all in the mix. That's in that weird, what would you call it? It's the weird stuff, the paranormal. I don't like the word paranormal, mostly because it's been overused and it's become kind of a parody of itself. But that whole metaphysical realm of things. And so we get into that sometimes. Sometimes we take off the metaphysical hat completely and we talk about some very deep historical stuff. You remember not so long ago, we talked about the conquest of the American West. Now, I will tell you, as a conservative, political conservative, as you all know me so well, my political ideologies, commonplace amongst conservatives is that thought that the Native American, well, you know what? It was a conquest. We conquested. That was in the age of conquest, the age of eminent domain, the age of saying manifest destiny, that we are expanding this nation from the East Coast all the way over to the West Coast and whatever northern and southern borders we had. And if you're in the way, we're going to take it from you. And yet there was that inkling of humanitarianism that was starting to come in. A lot of people didn't like what we were doing to the Native American culture, but it still existed and it still happened. And that's when we covered all of that, the conquest of the American West. We spent, I think, 6 or 7 weeks on that topic alone. And so we do that kind of thing on the show if you're not familiar with it. And tonight, we're going to do a little expansion on what we started talking about last week. It's more in that psychological realm. And we're going to talk about some of the stuff we talked about yesterday informally on the Sunday show. Now, just for the record, so if you're new here, Sunday morning show, completely informal. It's generally Rainey and me. When we talk about family stuff, we talk about all kinds of things. And the last couple of weeks when she hasn't been able to be on with me, we've talked about other things. But yesterday we talked a lot about some of this leading up into the loneliness factor that people have. And maybe that piqued my interest because you come out here, you get away from your family, and sometimes you think, "Ooh, maybe I'll bet you there's some of you sitting out there that go, man, I'd like to have a 2-week vacation from my family. That'd be awfully nice." I know right now, Rainey could sure use a mom vacation, a momcation, she calls it. And she wants to go with her massage partner, Kendra, and they want to maybe take a long weekend and go down somewhere. It's harder for her to do when I'm not there. But they need a little break, and especially now after my being gone for 2 weeks already, and going to be gone for another 3.5 months, thereabouts, and or until I strike it rich and I hit the mother lode, I find that vein and I hit it It's the mother lode. And so if that happened 2 weeks from now, you know what? I'd go home. If I won the lottery, I'd go home. Sorry, Pete. If I won the lottery, I'd go home. But he'd go home too. So, um, and but I'm here for about that much time. And so tonight, well, let me see what some of you were saying in here. Field guy just said, due to the weather, I'm having a night to myself and I'm happy. Well, field guy, that's because you're a social magnet. You're a social butterfly. You're always surrounded by people, you social animal, you coiled jungle cat, you, right? So, what did you just say? Remember me when you win the lotto, please, field guy. I'll remember you. I'll throw you a couple bucks. Here you go. Now go buy yourself a bike. So there you go. So nice Snoop Dogg commercial for you, Scotty. Says Michelle Canham free. I got to see what that one is. I'm not sure what that's the reference to, my darling McFree, but I'll have to look it up or send me a link or something, or I just missed something in the chat. Field guy says, "Women love me, love me. What can I say?" There it is. You know, and if you won the lotto, you'd probably be surrounded by people that want your love, your good love, your loving. That field guy love. And Matt Finn, Master Finn, good to see you. Excuse me. That was totally natural. What just happened? So roads closed here at noon, said field guy. They were closed this morning. We tried to go to Lowe's to pick up some building materials, and the Lowe's was open, but the building materials desk was closed. Nobody there manning it, so everybody was gone. Greg Harrington says the feeling of loneliness, even when surrounded by those you love. Perhaps blame the state of the world. Maybe. We're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, Greg, actually. So that's neat that you brought that up. Very synchronistic. Beth Kirkham, how you doing, ma'am? Good to see you. Glad you're here tonight. And so I want to hit this kind of, well, no, before I do, let me scroll back a little bit. Let's see what some of you are bringing to the table here tonight over in the chat room. Delaney's over in Janesville, Wisconsin. Yeah, that's down at the southern, near the southern border of Wisconsin. And yeah, I don't know what it's like up there right now. My wife said it's still cold. So it's not supposed to get above freezing until, might get above freezing, I think, later in the week up there, but barely so. Let's see what else we got in here. What's everybody bringing to the chat room tonight? Just thought I'd drop by since I'm stuck in the bloody Midwest cold, says Maya. Maya, come south where it's warm. Be sure to bring your sunglasses and your tanning oil. We can go sit on the beach together on the Gulf Coast and soak up that sun. I am being woefully sarcastic. All you're going to get on the beach is frostbite down here right now. Yeah, it's going to be warm down here, field guy. It's going to warm up this week down here. So by next week, I think I'll be able to brag to everybody that, oh, how do you people live up there in the Midwest and the North? You know, it's so warm down here. I was talking to a good old friend of mine, of 35 years, on the phone this morning, and he's over in Arizona. So I guess Arizona, the desert southwest, kind of missed this swath of Arctic frigid that blew in. Because I said, man, it's cold here over in Louisiana. I said, what are you getting over there? He goes, man, he says, it's been rough couple of days. He says it was like 65 degrees this morning. He says, almost insufferable. I had to put on a jacket. He said, because it was 76 to 78 yesterday. And he says, oh, wait a second. The pool guy just got here. Hang on. I got to go help him. I'll be right back. So that's Arizona, though. So what else we got? Let's see. I thought I'd drop by. No sleet or snow here, says field guy. We're having a blizzard as we speak, says Rock and Rhonda. Rhonda, what part of the country are you in, Rhonda? You've got a blizzard going. I've been in blizzards. I was in a blizzard. I was driving in a blizzard on my way here 2 weeks ago. If you remember that, some of the posts I made on that. 9 inches so far, Rhonda. Where are you located? I'm out of touch with the weather map right now. So that's the other thing, you move, you relocate, you're doing work somewhere, and really all the tools are still at my fingertips to find out what's going on in the news and what's going on in weather around the country and all of that. But you know what happens? You get a little bit out of touch. Let's see. Scott Lowry says about 3.5 to 4 inches of snow in the mountains where I live. I'd heard it was pretty cold in Denver and in Colorado from my friend Dan Madsen. And 1 degree Fahrenheit, it feels like -25. What people in the South don't realize, you hear those cold temperatures up north, you don't realize that wind, when the wind blows, creates a wind chill. And so there's a wind chill factor. You can be watching the weather in the morning, goes, it's 2 degrees this morning. Be sure you wear your coat, but really don't expose your skin because with that wind, the wind chill is actually -37 degrees, is what it feels like. So there you go. Let's see what else we got. Field guy says, I swear it never gets that cold here unless it's a freak storm, like now. Now, the people down here that we're working with, a lot of our customers, they went through the two hurricanes this last fall. And now they've got this going on top of it. So it's a lot of people that don't have power and stuff still. So at least not full power. One of my potential customers doesn't even have all of her power and plumbing back from the big storms. So let's see what else we got. Whiteout conditions, says Rockin' Rhonda, where you are. And what else we got? Okay, I'm all caught up here. So just wondering where everybody is and how your stuff is doing. Tonight, as I mentioned, excuse me, I'm going to be talking about a little bit about loneliness. And we kind of left off, we were talking about love on Sunday because it was Valentine's Day. What's love really? And we talked about that for a while. And we were also getting into just a little bit about now, if you missed the Sunday show, it was all about sex. And so it got a little sexual. But we were talking about when is sex spiritual? What is it about sex? And we were talking about sex for a while. We were getting everybody's private stories. So if you weren't there, you missed it. And then I mentioned on Sunday, I wanted to get into this new term they've coined in psychology. Not just being lonely, but alonely. And researchers have coined this new term for a mirror image of what loneliness is. And so I want to talk a little bit tonight about loneliness. Why am I so lonely? And the fact that there are really, when you boil it down, there's 7 types of loneliness and why that matters. Um, and one key, maybe the absolute key to loneliness, is so obvious, it goes whoosh right over our heads. And that is the key to happiness. Probably the key is our connectivity and our connections with other people. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. So the first thing that I want us to think about is, well, let's look at what's loneliness. Let's just kind of define it. Um, though our need to connect with other people is innate, it's part of who we are, many of us frequently feel alone. Now, personality types, of course, change. There are some people who are loners, some people who are introverts, some people who maybe by nature don't feel that they want to get out there and connect. They're not social. It doesn't mean they don't want connectivity. It means sometimes they're a lot more comfortable being alone. I know that there are times in my life, and maybe this comes from the fact that I'm always surrounded by somebody. When I'm at home and I've got 3 kids running and jumping around, and Rainy's there, and Rainy gets driven nuts by it. That there are times where you go, man, I kind of like it when she takes the kids and goes up to her mom's for an overnight, hang out at grandma's for the night. Um, you know what that does for me? Lets me walk around the house with no noise. It's like you stop for a second, you go, what was that? Oh, nothing. It's the sound of silence. So sometimes being alone is okay. Sometimes I can handle whole weekends alone, because nobody's there to bug me. I can do my own thing and I can enjoy myself. And sometimes it's kind of a nice thing to have. Maya says she doesn't do people very well, can take them in tiny bites. We're to take that literally. You eat people. Michelle Cannon Free. I used to suffer chronic loneliness, but I've been born anew. Is that because you had kids? I mean that seriously. So loneliness is a state of distress or discomfort that results when one perceives a gap between one's desire for social connectivity or connection, maybe is a better word, and actual experiences of it. And even some people are surrounded by others throughout the day or in long lasting marriages or relationships still experience this deep and pervasive loneliness. Well, let me ask you, and think about this as we go on with what we're going to talk about tonight. How can you be, or are you someone who is in a relationship? You got kids. Maybe you go to church or social functions or scouting like our family does. Or you see people all the time at work. Yet there are some of those people that are lonely. How can you be in those relationships and be lonely? Well, we'll see if we can hit on that a little bit tonight. But I'd be curious about what your thoughts are. Put it over in the chat room. Research suggests that loneliness poses serious threats to well being, as well as long term physical health. And so the first thing you've got to do, it sounds funny to do this. Loneliness is a feeling that we have, but sometimes identifying it helps you fight it. So whether a person lives in isolation or surrounded by people, feeling a lack of social connectedness can be really painful, can be really lonely. Loneliness can be described in different ways. And a common used measure of loneliness, the UCLA loneliness scale, asks individuals about a range of feelings of deficits of connection, including how often they, one, feel a lack of companionship. You have that? Two, feel left out. Three, feel in tune with people around them. Four, feel outgoing and friendly, and a lack of those things, or a lack of people that they can turn to. And so, given the potential health consequences for those who feel like they have few or no supportive social connectedness, widespread loneliness poses this very real major societal challenge. But it underscores a demand for increased outreach and a connection on a personal level. You can ask yourself this question: I have family and I have friends, but why am I still so lonely? Loneliness is as tied to the quality of one's relationships as it is to the number of connections that one has. You can even be an outgoing person with a effervescent or bubbly personality and find ultimately that there are people who have that sometimes that are very much alone and feel alone. And it doesn't only stem from heartache or isolation. There's a lack of authenticity in relationships. Hear me on that one. You know what a great source of loneliness is for somebody in a relationship? It's a lack of authenticity within that relationship. And that can result in feelings of loneliness. And for some, not having an animal companion, I'm not talking like a familiar. When back many years ago, 30 years ago, we used to play Dungeons and Dragons, my wife at the time and I, with some neighbors of ours downstairs from us in this big townhome complex we were in. We spent a lot of time with them, and we made up our characters. And I made up a character that was called, I named him Sanbalad the Druid. And he had a familiar, and his familiar was an animal familiar who was Ned the koala bear. And there's a lot more around that, but do you lack that connectivity with an animal companion? Or the absence of a quiet presence in the home can sometimes be lonely. Even if one only has plenty of social contacts in the wider world, a presence, the absence of a quiet presence in your home can sometimes trigger loneliness. And it's really hard sometimes to seek out companionship when you feel lonely. And there's a big question too. What is solitude versus loneliness? Solitude, or time that we spend alone. Superman in the Fortress of Solitude up at the North Pole, wherever it was up there, next to Santa, next door neighbors. Solitude or time spent alone isn't inherently negative, and can even be restorative or advantageous in other ways. Like I say, there's times I like to be alone. Research suggests that the reasons young people choose to be alone matter. They might do so to relax, to create, to reflect, rather than to necessarily avoid other people. Are you like that? So there's loneliness is connected to your health and your well-being. Can you die of loneliness? Well, a person can't die simply from feeling too lonely. That doesn't have a mortality rate necessarily. Findings that lonely people have a higher rate of mortality and certain diseases supports the idea that over time, chronic loneliness can play a role in increasing the risk of dying sooner. And excuse me. So there's lots of things about loneliness. We can define loneliness by a lot of different things. And even if you're not lonely, so to speak, you're surrounded by people, you can still be lonely. Hey, Corwin, good to see you. Glad to have you here tonight. Lisa Sharp, nice to have you. Let's see, you were saying something here, Lisa. I want to take a look at it. Many seem to feel the need to resort to alcohol or other substances to achieve the illusion of connection, to resolve their loneliness, even though they're not technically alone in the least bit. And you're absolutely right, Lisa. I don't know if there was more to that earlier on, but yeah, I'm scanning back. I don't see anything else there. They're extroverted introverts, says Michelle Canham Free. As much as it looks like I like to be a social animal, I like to go out there. I like to talk to people. I like to, you know me. And do you think I have any problems talking in a crowd? I can meet new people and want to talk right away as if I'm familiar with them. Not because it's mostly because I don't feel any angst talking to anybody or making connections with people. I can joke with people or talk about things with people I've only known for 8 minutes because I can create that familiarity right away. That's the way I am. But at the same time, as much as I don't need all that social attention or connectivity. Sometimes I just get it because of the things I do. I go out and I sell to people cold at their houses in this job down here in Louisiana. Hey, I see you got blue tarp up on your roof. And I want to talk to you about the storms. Do you have damage to your roof? Do you have an insurance company that's helping you out yet? Do you have a contractor? And you can open up a conversation like that. And generally, I'll try to look for something in somebody that I can immediately relate to. Somebody says, "Yeah, well, there's this and that, and then there's this thing that happened." I go, "That's the same kind of thing happened to me." And I'll say, and I, what I do with a lot of these people? I'll reveal a lot of private things about my life to make a connectivity with them, even though it's a client. I've got something came up the other day. I don't remember what the person said in the first 2 minutes of knowing them. I said, I got 29-year-old twin daughters and a 20-year-old boy. I said, he's right there. That's my son Sam coming along with me. And I got three little ones at home. I said, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't remember what we were talking about, but that was just in a light conversation with somebody. Yet, with all this socializing I can do and connectivities I can make, I can still crave the alone time where I don't get a phone call. I don't have to do nothing. And any kind of contact socially with people is because I've initiated it, not because I'm forced into it. So that can happen to a lot of people. Maya says, I believe loneliness is a result of point of view. Lonely people tend to judge or view life outside of themselves, and that's where the feeling comes from. Maybe so. I think you might be right. I think that there are a lot of people who avoid social contact for their perception of what that means, and they become lonely people. Doug says, I'm the most extroverted introvert I know. There, I was using Doug's voice. Remember, I met him. He took us out to dinner about a week and a half ago, my son and I. And Doug says, I'm from Jersey, but I picked up this Louisiana Cajun thing a long time ago. And so, it reminds me, my son and I were laughing today. We were talking about Val Kilmer's performance as Doc Holliday in the movie Tombstone to Kurt Russell's Wyatt Earp. And I said, there was another performance that was. We all think to Val Kilmer, but did you know the same? It was either the same year or the year before or the year after. Kevin Costner did his big, huge Wyatt Earp film, and who played Doc Holliday. And anybody remember who played Doc Holliday in that movie? Doesn't come off the top of your head. It shows how much more Val Kilmer's performance did, but it was Dennis Quaid played Doc Holliday, and he played him with a more gruffer voice, because he's dying of tuberculosis. And but there was exactly my Quaid, and there was a line he said, and I've used the line before, but my son and I were laughing about this today, and he says, I remember Dennis Quaid, not the exact word for word quote from the movie, but he said something like, "Ah, yes, Georgia. Georgia was a green and lovely place, and I fear I shall never see her again. And that's because when I was there was a man that so offended my sensibilities that I sought to take his life. Yet better judgment o'ertook me." And so he had some great lines in that, and he did a fantastic played Doc Holliday fantastically. You remember that line, Maya? Yeah, exactly. Hey, Morgan Snow, good to see you. And how serendipitous that Morgan Snow, because we were talking about Tombstone for a second there, and Morgan Earp, of course, was another character. So, but as we go on here talking about loneliness, ask yourself. I'm going to ask you: are you lonely? Even Doc Holliday in the movies had "Why You Are My Friend," and yet he was a lonely man. But that's not our example for those of you just joining us. That was just a weird thing that popped into my mind as we were talking. But are you lonely? Are you alone? Are you this new phrase, this new word, alonely? Adding an A on the front of the word lonely. And researchers have coined this as a mirror image of loneliness. Have you ever wondered what the opposite of lonely is? And given that we've just had Valentine's Day and it feels like COVID, the pandemic is never going to end, at least politically. Sorry, don't go there. We're not going to talk about politics. We'll do that some other time. Erase the word politically from my last sentence if you don't want to hear that. But it feels like it's never going to stop. And this might seem like a strange question to ask. Are you lonely? Or are you a lonely? But if you're one of the millions of people worldwide whose private home has now become a public space, simultaneously a home office and a remote classroom, and everything we do at home, we're all sequestered. We're all under these quarantines of one type or another, social distancing. Tend to think there's a reason behind social distancing that has nothing to do with the pandemic, but it's there. But you've opened up your homes because you got to have, like my own kids. They go to school physically, but they've done it online too. They have doctor's appointments online, counseling appointments online. They have all kinds of things that happens online. Sometimes the scouting stuff happens online. And so the house and if you're working at home because you can't go to the office, your home becomes the office. So it's all opened up. And you might find yourself in a category of the lonely. That's the opposite of loneliness. Loneliness has been well researched in the social sciences and given its negative effects on mental and physical health. It's generally been defined as the subjective feeling of dissatisfaction with one's interpersonal and social relationships. But does a mirror image of that exist? Here's what I mean by that. Could one ever feel a dissatisfaction that comes from the sense of knowing that you haven't been spending enough time by yourself? Is that the opposite of loneliness? Is it loneliness? Being like political, whatever, meaning absent of. So many of us who enjoy being alone have lived with this kind of a question for a very long time. And we already know the answer to that, but the question hasn't come under scientific investigation until very recently when psychologist, a guy named Dr. Rob Copeland, and his colleagues conducted a series of studies that sought to more deeply understand the implications of feeling deprived of solitude. Hang on a second. I hate to do this uh, during the show, but my own children are trying to contact me. That's the sounds that you're hearing. So I'm just going to tell them very quickly in type here that hey, Dad's on the radio. Where'd it go? Hold on. I'm going to do that right now as we're talking. And I still don't have the hang of the mouse on this PC. It's like I got to have my hand all the way over to the left to hit the right part of the mouse, where the mouse on my computer, my laptop, is totally different. Let's see. I'm just going to tell her on radio. And that's not actually raining. That's Rowan. So I'm going to have to call her when we're done here. I tried to call them earlier and all doing other things. So um, it's this idea that this is a series of studies that was sought to more deeply understand the implications of feeling deprived of solitude, being all lonely. Are you all lonely? Are you so surrounded by things and people and the never ending list of things you've got to do now online because of technology? There was a pandemic 100 years ago when people stayed home, nobody saw anybody. Maybe the opposite problem. Now the problem is that there is no solitude. Why? Because anybody can get a hold of you at any time for any reason. Uh, you just simply take the time to be by yourself, says Beth Kirkham. And a lot of people do. A lot of people, however, are trapped in that absolute need to always have to be connected to somebody with something. My friend Pete here. Now, I know he enjoys this, but one of his pastimes, playing games, video games. And he plays with other people. He's got the headset and he talks to the people that he's shooting up the enemy with. That's social connectivity for him. But some people have that, maybe that. They've got work, they've got school, they've got everything else that's going on. And at this time where it's like a lot of people are lonely, they're the opposite of that. They're all lonely because they have no time at all to themselves. I look at my wife, Rainey, right now, who so many of you know. I feel for her because my wife, I think, suffers from being lonely. Never a moment to herself. If you're on my Facebook, you saw that I talked to her today. I happened to call her while she was taking a bath and nodding off. And she said, "Wow, I almost fell asleep there." I said, "It's too bad we don't have a jacuzzi tub. Help you loosen up, get that stress out." She's like, "No, if I had a jacuzzi tub, I'd fall asleep and sink into the water, and the kids would find me floating dead." So, but even when I talk to my wife on the phone, she is constantly surrounded by kids. Kids didn't go to school today because it's President's holiday, President's Day, and so they were home. I talk to every time I talk to my wife when the kids are home. Not a moment without interruption. And they've been home a lot lately. My kids were quarantined for several weeks, one after the other, because of some of the outbreaks of COVID. The fact that I had COVID, my wife had COVID, all of those things kept them home for several weeks at a shot. And so it was pretty ridiculous. So my wife never had a moment to herself. And so ask yourself this: how do you know if you're experiencing a loneliness? And there's plenty of research that's shown that seeking solitude can be very beneficial if certain criteria are met. And it's sought after by choice. It's enjoyed in moderate amounts and it's balanced with spending time with other people. We also know that some people inherently desire more solitude than others. And when it's not connected with shyness or social anxieties of any kind, anything like that, seeking time alone is a perfectly well adjusted thing to do. However, when this desire isn't fulfilled at all, the feeling of a loneliness results. The prefix indicating not, as in asymmetrical or apolitical or whatever. As I mentioned earlier. And so the researchers developed the solitude and a loneliness scale, a self report questionnaire that asked participants to rate how much they agreed with statements like, "It would be nice if I could spend more time alone each day." And statements like, "I wish I could just be by myself more often." And if you look at this questionnaire and received a high score, if you took it, the researchers would classify you as lonely. Look at my wife, and I say, my wife's constantly saying, "I have no time for anything. I don't have time to do anything." And this was all like, for instance, when I was smoking on a very regular basis, I smoke very little now overall compared to what I used to smoke. But I'd be working in the office at home and I'd go step outside and have a smoke, couple, three, four times a day. And Rainey says, "You even get smoke time." And she said, "The kids don't go and bug you. You have that free time to yourself." "I don't have that," she says, "because I don't smoke." And I said, "Well, come on out and have a cigarette." I said, "Or go grab a cup of coffee." But you know what happens? Wherever mom goes, the 6-year-old wants to follow. The 9-year-old and the 11-year-old are starting to get a little more independent of mom. The 11-year-old, totally 11-year-old. But constantly throughout the last several years, these kids, even now, they'll fight. When there's something, they need something. I can be standing right there in the kitchen, pouring myself a cup of coffee. A kid will walk right by me, go find mom on the other side of the house, and say, "Mom, I need some toast." And so these kids were constantly using up her time. And she had none of her own. Have you ever experienced that? You got kids, you got things that you are so inundated by people and responsibilities and places and people you have to see and social things you have to do and kids that you can't just find time for yourself. That's what my wife experiences, that loneliness. I've always been a person who can separate myself pretty easily. I'll tell my kids I had my three older kids before Rainey was in the picture. I just tell them, I'm stepping outside. You guys go do your own thing in the house. If you have an emergency, come and see me. And I could always find time for myself. Rainey is very connected to them, so it's tougher for her. And hey, Barbie D, good to see you. Nice to have you here. Glad you could make it in. And Steph Cuervo, Queen. Good to see you, Steph. Glad you're here. I don't know if I've missed anybody else coming in because I'm not paying close attention to the chat room. Look at that. We've already got only 10 minutes left, and I haven't even got to the 7 things. And we're talking about loneliness. And so I'm going to move on. I have a bunch of stuff I want to talk about. Why am I so lonely? Being alone and feeling alone are two different things. We've kind of hit on loneliness. I can do more on that another time. But I want to, at least in the last 10 minutes, and we'll go over time if we have to. I don't think anybody will mind. I did want to talk about the 7 types of loneliness and why that matters. Why it matters to define these things, to look at them. And as I said about this when I was introducing this at the beginning of the program, the key, perhaps the key to loneliness or to happiness is strong connection to other people. And that's what counters loneliness. Now, one major challenge within happiness is loneliness. And loneliness is the opposite, of course, of the loneliness, which we were just talking about. And the more I've learned about happiness and being happy, the more I've come to believe that loneliness is this common and important obstacle to consider. I'm a happy person overall. I'm pretty upbeat. I have my moments where I'm pessimist. Remember, we were talking about pessimism and optimism last week? That was all a precursor to this stuff. We never got to it last week. And we aren't going to finish it tonight. But to be happy, we need these intimate bonds with other people. We need to be able to confide. How would you be if you couldn't confide in anybody? Maybe some people are fine with that. Some people like to share their stuff with people. For me, in a way, all of you on this show, are part of the people I confide in. Now, I'm not going to you and I'm asking intimate advice or whatever, but I share a lot of intimacies with you people. You folks who come in to listen to this show. So I vent there, I confide there. As I've said, this radio show, maybe years and years from now when I'm gone, my grandkids could look to this show as a video journal of my life and times. Because I put out a lot of personal stuff in there. But we need to feel like we belong. Maybe some of us are here tonight because we feel this is the thing I belong to. This is my group. And that's okay. That's perfect. We need to be able to get and to give support. In fact, strong relationships are key because perhaps the key to a happy life. And of course, being alone and being lonely, as we've just talked about, aren't really the same thing. Loneliness feels draining, distracting, upsetting. Desired solitude feels peaceful, creative, restorative. These are things we look at. And it seems to me that there are several types of loneliness. Of course, not everyone experiences loneliness in the situations that we can talk about here. For instance, not everyone wants a romantic partner. I know some of you in this chat room don't really want a romantic partner. Some of you want one. But for some people, the lack of certain kinds of relationships brings on that loneliness. And so once we pinpointed the particular kind of loneliness we're experiencing, it might be easier to spot ways to address it in your life. And here are some types that I've identified. And you tell me as you hear this, in these 7 types of loneliness, what do you think I'm missing? Or have we covered it all here? Number 1, new situation loneliness. What's new situation loneliness? You've moved to a new city, you've started a new job, you don't know anyone, or you've stayed at a school full of unfamiliar faces. Started at a school, and you're lonely. That's one type. That's a real easy one. New situation loneliness. How many of you are in that? Are you in new situations where you're the unrecognized person? Right now, I'm not lonely because of it, but I'm here in a new city. I don't know my way around yet. I've gotten to know by looking at maps and following the GPS certain courses that I take every day to go out to neighborhoods where I'm talking to potential clients. So I've started to gain a little bit of familiarity. But when I first got here, it was like I don't even know where to go. Thank God we have such a thing and such tech as a GPS. Otherwise, I'd have to go buy a Hudson map book. Remember those if you're old enough? So new situation loneliness. For me, that took on there was a certain loneliness of being in a new situation because I was apart from the people I loved. And I had an old song that would pop into my mind. It just popped into my mind just now, so I'm going to recite it for you. But it was written by Wayne Watson. It was a Christian songwriter, and I think this song is from the '80s. I don't think it's as late as the '90s, but it's very soft. It's a gentle song done on its strings, and he sings this song. He says, "It's good to be lonely every now and again, to be parted from the ones you adore, to sit at a table for two all alone and take a look at the world around you, at people who have no one to go home to, some with no place to belong, others who are consumed by their weakness, and yet others, uh, when weak, who seem strong." And so the key words in that song for me, the way it started, it's good to be lonely every now and again. And it's a Christian song, so it had a Christian overtone. And in the chorus, he said, "Lord, let me be at peace wherever I am, satisfied, secure, uh, an enduring friend," or something. He said, "and know um, that I'm grateful because if it makes me love you," and he's talking to God a little bit more, "I know I'm sure that it's good to be lonely every now and again." And we all have those lonelinesses that we go through. We all have those things that part us. It's being parted from people we love and adore. And of course, I felt that here. And when I first got here, I still feel that. It'll get stronger every day. And so here's the thing as you start thinking about this. That first one, new situation loneliness, being apart from the people that you love and adore. Number two, the I'm different loneliness. You're in a place that isn't familiar, but you feel different from the other people in an important way that makes you feel isolated. And maybe your faith is really important to you, and the people around you don't share that, or vice versa. And it feels hard to connect with other people about the things that you find important. Or maybe you're just hit with the loneliness that hits all of us sometimes. It's that loneliness that's part of the human condition. So the I'm different loneliness. Number three, the sweetheart loneliness. We all had this to some extent at some point. Even if you have lots of family and friends, you feel lonely because you don't have that intimate attachment of a romantic partner. Or maybe you have a partner, but you don't feel a deep connection to that person. That's an even worse, in my opinion, that's an even worse kind of loneliness than the not having a relationship loneliness. That loneliness of being in a relationship but having no connection with the other person. That kind of a loneliness that's brought on. And so there's that kind of loneliness. That was number three, the relationship or the sweetheart loneliness. Number four is the no animal loneliness. Now, many people um, have a deep need to connect to. Hold on, I got something going screwy with my computer here. Everything's going on and off on me here. There we go. Um, Doug, 67 miles from here, you just said. Yeah, that's how far away he is. Hey, Sarah Nichols. Good to see you. So, there's the no animal loneliness that some people feel. Many people have this deep need to connect with animals. Now, I like animals, but do I have a deep need to connect with them? It's not like it used to be when I was younger for some reason. I don't know why. Um, I have a dog. Well, we have a dog here. This is my friend's dog that lives in this camper with us. Cool dog, sweet dog. He's a puppy still, medium large height, but he's got white hair, and that white hair is on everything. Creates a layer of white hair, and of course, he wants to be played with all the time. And he's a high energy. He's uh, he's part Australian blue heeler, Australian red heeler, and boxer. Now he looks healer. He's got the pointy ears and but he's got all this white hair and it's everywhere. And I complain every day. I'm going, damn it! I got a layer of. I got to get a one of those sticky roller brushes to get the dog off of me every time I leave the house. The dog hair, and he wants to play, so he's always on you. He's always on your feet. He's always been. We're all trying to train him the right way. So I don't have a no animal loneliness, right? But many people have this deep need to connect with animals. And it just describes you, and you're sustained by these relationships with animals in a way that humans don't replace. You understand what I'm talking about. And while I love my dog, Lucy Fur, back home, I don't feel this myself. I don't have that need to have the animal there all the time. But many people feel like something important is missing if they don't have a dog or a cat or less conveniently a horse. I just posted an old picture from 10, 11 years ago of me riding my horse out on the ranch. It's up on my Facebook page. It was an old memory that popped up and I reposted it. And so people like that. I loved having my horse, Fergus. And but I don't have him anymore. Don't have the ranch anymore. 5, there's a no time for me loneliness. And by the way, folks, it's 10:02, so we're running just a little bit over. I think we'll do that rather than carry this topic over in tomorrow. The no time for me loneliness. Sometimes you're surrounded by people who seem friendly enough, but they don't really want to make the jump from friendly to friends. There is a big difference. And maybe they're too busy with their own lives, or they have lots of friends already, or so many friends that they meter themselves out to their friends. So while you'd like a deeper connection, they're not really interested in that. Or maybe your existing friends have entered a new phase that means they no longer have time for the things that you all used to do. Everyone started working long hours, started a family. Your social scene has changed. When Rainey and I started having children, it changed the landscape of our whole social structure in our lives. And we as a couple became a little lonely for our friends. Then we bought the ranch and we moved out to the ranch. We had 40 acres out in the country with woods on it. And I talked about this a little bit before, but we had all the horses out there. And that was great, but we didn't have close neighbors. And all the people that used to come to remember Scotch and cookies, I talked about that. That's when we lived in St. Paul, Minnesota, in the city. Once we moved out to the country, we were a good 45 minutes away from everybody. And who wanted to drive out there? So social life changes. So there's the um, that's that kind of no time for me loneliness that some of us experience. So how about I want to make sure I didn't skip one here. Yeah, that was number 5. Number 6 of the 7 is the untrustworthy friends loneliness. Now, sometimes we get in a situation where you begin to doubt whether your friends are really truly well intentioned, um, whether they're kind, whether they're really helpful, as you could be to them. And you're friends with people, but don't quite trust them in that respect. And an important element of friendship is the ability to confide and to trust. So if that's missing, you might feel lonely, even if you have fun with your friends. There's not that closeness, that intimacy that you would like to have with friends. Number seven is the quiet presence, loneliness. Sometimes you might feel lonely because you maybe miss having someone else's quiet presence. You might have an active social circle at work or have plenty of friends and family that you can turn to, but you miss having someone to hang out with at home or when you just go out, go do stuff. Whether that would mean living with a roommate, a family member, a sweetheart, whatever it is, just someone who's fixing a cup of coffee in the next room or reading on the sofa. Yeah, that kind of loneliness. So it's very important for us to realize why we feel lonely, because only then can we see how we might address it. If you're no time for me lonely, for instance, maybe a solution would be to work with people on a project or to do something, find ways. I'm thinking of cliche ways popping in mind, but ways where you'd be doing an endeavor together with someone on something that you've all made time for. It's easier to make friends when you're working on a project together. Now, loneliness, so, is a major factor in unhappiness. So it's an important area to tackle if you're working on making yourself happier. And so, one of the key to happiness, is strong connections to other people. And the lack of these bonds, even temporarily, is this major happiness stumbling block. And he found any good ways to understand and deal with loneliness. And there's good books out there on this, but I like us to talk about it. It's easy to throw a book at somebody and say, hey, if you got this problem or this shortcoming in your life, or you feel what is a shortcoming, there's things you can, here's a book, read this. But sometimes we don't need the book, we need the person, we need to talk about things. Fig Newtons and what is that? Scotch, Michelle Cannon-Free? Exactly. You should see my Scotch cabinet at home. I've got the scotches all lined up, all my different single malt Highland scotches. And then I've got a glass jar that's constantly filled with Fig Newtons with a lid on it that's up in the glass liquor cabinet, if you will, the Scotch cabinet. And so Marie Keithley, hey Marie, how you doing? And she says she'll go back and listen when it's done. That's cool. Glad you could make it in for a little bit. Steve Clark, good to see you. You set a record in the number of days of very cold weather in your part of Kansas. I'll bet you did. It's cold down here in Louisiana. It's just crazy cold. So, um, Roger Rabbit, good to see you. Stumbling block is an understatement for sure, he says. And that's the truth sometimes of this. Sometimes we are our own stumbling blocks to getting past these situations. So, I'm just scrolling back here now. We kind of wrapped it up. That's about all I have to say about that topic tonight. Before we go, I just want to see if there's anything standing out here that we need to address publicly. Um, uh, I see Doug just saying, just out of the blue here, it says, Morgan, is he not intelligent, or is he one of the idiot males that don't look at you as an equal? Now, I don't know what that's about, but I can understand what you're talking about. Here, Morgan had said, not being able to have intelligent conversations with my hubby, that makes me feel lonely. And Doug, she may have said this already and corrected, but Morgan lost her husband early. And so she doesn't have that intelligent conversation with him anymore. My wife and I love to have intelligent conversations. And I would miss that if she were gone. And I would hope that she would miss it if I were gone. But sometimes our intelligent conversations don't get very far because we're always interrupted, which goes back to my wife's loneliness, always surrounded by someone that's stealing her time or taking her time that she freely gives and loves to give. But after a while, she just needs a break. She needs that time to be a little bit alone. Do you know what happens? Rainey went up last year to visit her sister in Alaska. They're stationed in Alaska, and she went up to visit her sister. And I had the kids for the week. And of course, what happens after day one? She's calling home and misses everybody. So, so it's not a loneliness, an all loneliness that is induced by people you don't like. Sometimes that all loneliness comes because you're surrounded all the time by the people you love, and you need to have that. It's good to be lonely every now and again for a good thing. So, well, there we go, folks. Maya says, address the issue of more scotch, more Fig Newtons. I'll gladly address that issue. I love my single malt Highland Scotch. I had some Maker's Mark here last night. One of the partners in the company brought it over, and I had a shot of that. And that's enough. It's Maker's Mark. It's not my stuff, not my brand. You give me a good single malt Highland, 18-year-old single malt Highland Scotch, a Glenmorangie aged in rosewood casks, and you're going to find very satisfied with it. I like a good Balvenie. A 10-year-old Balvenie Doublewood is very good. I always say if it starts with a Glen, Ben, Bal, Dal, Mac, or O, it's good for me. Or Lag. There's Lagavulin as well. I like a good 16. I like a 10-year-old and 12-year-old Scotch every now and then. But a 16, 18 to 21-year-old Scotch is just as good. I think the oldest Scotch I've drunk personally is a 76-year-old Scotch, which was back, oh God, it was back before I met Rainey. So that's a good 16, 17 years ago. I was treated on my birthday to one shot of Scotch that at that time, which would now be 90 years old, but at the time was 76 or thereabouts years old. And it was basically $1 per year because it was a $76 shot of Scotch. And you didn't want to take the shot, you wanted to sip that Scotch. And I found that it didn't taste much different than the 18-year-old. So there you go. Good lemonade is my drink, says Barbie D. Are we talking hard lemonade, Barbie D? Are we talking lemonade? Squeezed lemon. Fresh squoze lemonade is good. I like that. Louis the 13th is delightful. I've never had that, Lisa Sharp. Good to have you here, by the way, though. I've never had Louis the 13th.
Yeah.
I don't like blends. There's only one blend that I'll really drink, and that's Jameson Irish whiskey. I like that, but it's a blend. So, brewing some hot cocoa with a spot of Irish cream. Yeah, that's a good drink. I like my coffee with a good Irish cream in it, and not every day before work. I'm just talking on certain occasions. Sitting home on Saturday or Sunday and being able to dab a little instead of having regular cream in my coffee, pouring a little Irish cream. That's always good. I like that. So I don't know how we got off on scotches. I think it was who was it that brought up scotch, Maya? Or no, it was somebody else. Where'd that go? Trying to see who said it. Oh yeah, it is Maya. Maya said something about scotch, and that's how I got off on that. I love you too, Michelle Canham Free. I honestly do. A ditto from me. So you people are some of the people I like to confide in. Some of the people that I have there. You don't hear everything. You don't hear the super intimate details of things, but you hear a lot of it. You hear most of it. I got to tell you, and I got no problem sharing it. Michelle says, Scotty, I'll comment on this stream. Feel free to click on my avatar in the comments section to watch my 2 short videos. I will do it, Michelle. Thank you. Coming at you, Maya. Says Rhonda. Says Rockin' Rhonda. Maya K to me. Me too. Matt, beautiful souls, says Matt. And I agree with you. Steve Clark, moonshine, good homemade moonshine. Do you make it, Steve? Steve, do you make your own shine? If you do, you're going to find me wanting to come knocking on your door and trying some of that. So, and we'll have to make that happen one of these days. So, folks, that's pretty much it. It's 10:15. You notice whenever we do a live show, it's so easy to go 10 and 15 minutes over. If I had an extra 10 or 15 minutes every day, I'd probably go over every day. If we were limited to Odyssey Radio and our time limitations on that, the show would have already ended. But we're going to do more and more when we get back onto Odyssey in a technical manner. We'll still do more like we used to, do more after shows where we can come over here and go live. So, yeah, Doug, I'll have to try some of that too. I'm a little scared of Bayou country, Cajun country. Shine for some reason. Kind of back in the swamps, the alligators, and getting me some shine. So, Roger, you're welcome. You have a good night. Say hi to Carly and to Kinsey for me. Doug Stack, you have a good night. Maya, have a good night. Barbie D, you have a good night. Beth Kirkham. Corin Browning, love you too, brother. Wish we saw more of you. I'd love to talk to you sometimes. A little more intimate detail. Find out more about what you're thinking and where you're at, where you're coming from. And anyone else curious about what I look and sound like, come to the comments section of this live stream and come to my channel and say, hey, Shell, I'm going to do it. Gonna do it. All of you got to do it. So, folks, thank you for being here. Thank you for hanging with me. Remember, tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Mountain Time, 7 p.m. Left Coast Time, we'll be back here and with another show. And every night this week, same thing, Monday through Friday. So thanks for being here. Go check out my Etsy page, etsy.com/shop/son of a patriot, and see some of the garments that we have. I've designed everything you'll find on there is a design of mine. Come to my website, scottallenroberts.com, my full name. Allen is A-L-A-N. Let's come on over to scottallenroberts.com. See all the stuff I do, what I do for a living. Illustrator, book illustrator, children's book illustrator, technical illustrator, designer, corporate identity designer, stuff like that. I do it all. And remember, my wife also has an Etsy page where you might find some stuff you really like. If you go to my Etsy page, you can find hers. Mine is Son of a Patriot. Hers is Mama Hathors. So go take a look at what she does, her homemade journals and her little Egyptian stuff and all of that. So, guys, that's it. Thank you for being here. I will see you right back here tomorrow night. And I was bumping things around. And I'll talk to you soon. You have a good rest of your night. And remember, live long and prosper. See you later.